Good evening, good evening, good evening. Take Charge Tuesday is getting underway, and I am extremely excited. Oh, I meant to play music. I've been doing this thing where I'm like, I'm going to play that. There we go. Something to get us started. So it is nice to be with you this week, and we have something important to talk about. So I personally am excited about this topic, mostly because I think it's a topic that's not well served, so to speak. So one of the biggest challenges with the topic of objections and negotiations and all of those things is that we are we kind of gender this conversation. So it ends up being a conversation that's more along the lines of like, you have to take charge and of the conversation, and it just kind of gets very much about sales and not a lot about relationships and relationship management and really just being human. And I personally think that this entire conversation is really more a conversation about humanity than it is about anything else. So that said, that's the conversation that we're going to have. So this whole overcoming objections thing it's never for me about I'm going to trick someone. I'm going to coax or cajole or like throw things in at the last second or like be deceptive or any of that. I don't think any of those things actually works long term. If you are into having a super short term business where you're going to burn a bunch of people and like be out of business in a couple years, do it. But I personally don't want to do that. I want to hold on to my reputation. And also, I just never found the idea of lying all that appealing. It just takes too much mental effort to manage. And so, that said, hey, Alex, that said, we are going to talk about negotiation from a perspective of like honesty and like realness. And we're going to talk about how to overcome objections in that kind of way. So, as I've said before, the biggest challenge is that I don't want any of us to feel like we have to like lie or do anything unethical. Okay. So, that said, let's talk about the main objections that people are going to get, because the objections that you get and why I think this is not a sales conversation, it's so much more than that. The objections that you get can end up being the thing that lead you into the best marketing that you're ever going to have. And so what you want to do, regardless of, whether you're selling products or services, is not just have to be a service-based conversation, whether you're B2B or B2C, kind of going through this list of objections or this list of types of objections, which we're going to go over in a second. It actually is going to give you a way to think about your marketing much more in a much more utilitous fashion, right? So we need to be thinking about marketing as a utility, as something that we're doing actively and something that's useful to our business, that's going to help us move towards the results that we want. But instead of it being like, all about having people know that we exist, which is good, but it's not the only thing your marketing should be doing. It's not just brand awareness. There's other jobs that marketing needs to do. So, what are the core objections? And I'm going to say this forever because it's my brain just does it automatically. What are the core objections that people have? So I'm going to type them into the chat as I am going. So the first one is going to be no budget. The first thing people say whenever you are like trying to sell them something is, oh, I don't have the money for that. Whether it is a, microphone. So here I have I have a microphone here. Whether it's a microphone, phone, bottle of lipstick, a container of lipstick, doesn't matter what it is. LaCroix, there are people who are like, oh my goodness, you drink that expensive water. Like, people will always use money as an excuse. So number one, budget. Number two, yes, Alex, it becomes a thing. No need. Like, I don't need that thing. And sometimes that's real. So there's that. But the idea is, I'm like, I don't feel like this is right for us. I don't need this, that sort of thing, right? So no need is a big one. Number three, oh, this one hits me right in the feels. Lack of experience. Lack of experience is the idea that, like, I don't know that you can do this, right? How many clients are you doing this with? Like, who else have you worked with? That sort of thing. That's the lack of experience. Well, we're going to go back through these in a second. So, lack of experience. Number four is, this is not a priority right now, or there's no urgency. And or let me put and or lack of urgency. Lack of urgency is a good one for marketing. All right, lack of urgency is a great objection to get from people, because if you can think through it, then you will have a whole lot of opportunities for marketing to new customers. So lack of urgency is number four. And then the fifth kind of category that we're going to talk about is no trust. So this one kind of comes back to the lack of experience, but this one is more related to, like, I don't understand how you are doing this, or like, like, I'm not sure it's appropriate for us. Like, you could just be trying to talk me into something. So maybe it's the idea that it sounds too good to be true, or that it sounds like it's something that is, like, totally not something that they actually need. So they are kind of in the, not that they need it, but that they don't believe you. Like, there's like a really different perspective there on the not believing you versus the not thinking that they actually need it. Those are two totally different things. Okay, so with those in mind, these are, as I have said before, and we'll say again, blessings in disguise. So let's kind of talk through them. When someone, and this is how I want you to think about objections. So Alex has said that, she gets that that money objection. She got one today. That happens regularly, where people are going to say, oh, I don't have the money for this thing or that thing or whatever. And what I want you to do with every single one of these is try to think of questions that you can ask that will get you further into a conversation. Not because you're going to try to convince this person that they do have enough money. That's not the point. So when you get an objection, you need to reframe the entire thing for yourself. Instead of framing it like, oh, well, I have to convince this person that they do have enough money or that it is worth it. Think of it this way. What you really want to know is not that this person doesn't have the budget for it or they don't have enough money for it. They're using that money somewhere else. And that's fine. You don't, again, if you remove the idea that you're going to try to get them to take the money that they're using somewhere else and use it for you, just dispense of that completely. We're going to ignore that idea altogether. The real question is just why? Like, why is this too expensive for this product? If you can get at that question, like at that actual answer from a real person, then you will start moving towards what I like to call the marketing material side of overcoming objections. So of overcoming objections is a proactive thing, not a reactive thing. Okay. So we're going to, again, flip the script. We're not trying to convince this one person that they're wrong. We are trying to gain information from this person so that some person in the future will just get a better version of marketing from us that automatically is overcoming that objection, so that we're no longer having to chase people down and convince them that we're worth it. Instead, we'll be able to frame our marketing around the fact that we know people think that X amount of money is too much money for this thing, right? So instead of lowering our costs or offering discounts or things like that, we're not doing any of that. What we're going to ask is a bunch of why questions. And you don't want to be juvenile about this. Like if someone says, if you're offering, let me try to think of something. Oh, I have some lovely hand sanitizer here on my desk. Of course, it's not going to focus on it. I probably don't want it to focus on it, honestly, because then it won't focus on me. Okay, there we go. So lovely hand sanitizer on my desk. There will be people, this exact container of hand sanitizer has probably been 6 or 7 different prices, and that was from Target. So it's not even a brand name of any sort. It's just a Target hand sanitizer in a tiny container that is portable. The price of that is flexible. It is based on demand. It is based a lot on demand. It is currently the prices of things are not even based on demand. A lot of them are based on the level of need in the environment. So meaning not supply and demand. So supply, I should say, not it's not always based on supply. It's always based on demand at this point. So it's not that, we're running out of hand sanitizer. That's not necessarily the thing that's going to change the price. But the thing that might change the price is the fact that everybody wants it. So it becomes something that you can charge a lot of money for. Now, the questions, if I look at a bottle of hand sanitizer, and you can start working through this yourself. So I don't want you to feel like you have to get rejected in order to start thinking about this stuff. If you're thinking about a bottle of hand sanitizer or something, bookends, it doesn't matter what it is, physical or in a service-based thing, and someone gives you a price for it. The question that you need to start asking yourself is this expensive? And if the question is yes, or the answer is yes, then the next question is why? Why do I think this is expensive? Is it because you have a different cost in your mind because you've paid for the service at a various other point? So you're comparing it to the price that someone else has. Now, that is a marketing opportunity. So if someone says, "Oh, well, I think it's not really the price I was thinking about paying, mostly because I've seen this type of service or this type of product over here for this price," then you say, "Oh, okay. That makes sense." And then you can build that into your marketing. You're not going to try again. We're not going to stop and in that moment try to convince someone to buy our thing. We're taking note of these objections so that we can build marketing around them. And so now you can build your marketing and say, okay, you have a competitor that someone is saying, this is how much I paid for this thing over here, and this is what you're offering, and this is how much it costs, and these two costs are not comparable to me. And so you're going to build up your marketing to explain why either you're offering something completely different from this thing over here that person's comparing you to, or why you're offering more value than this thing over here. Whatever the reason is for the price differentiation, you need to be able to use your marketing to explain it. Okay. But you can't explain it if you're not willing to face it. So you have to face down the objection instead of saying, "Oh, well, people are just cheap," or "people always buy on price." None of those things is true. People buy on price according to whatever decision-making criteria is in their head. Like, it's a list of things. It's not the number that determines whether or not something is expensive. It is a list of other opportunities that person has that is going to determine whether or not that thing is expensive. $66,000 for tuition might seem like it's very expensive to some person and not at all expensive for another person, depending on what the option or the thing that is being offered for that $66,000, what the value is someone's going to get. If one person will look at that and go, "I don't need whatever that thing is that I get for that money, so I will spend way less money on tuition somewhere else." And some other person will say, "I can't get to where I'm trying to go without paying that $66,000. So that is cheap by comparison to where I want to be." And that is a different mindset. Neither of those people is right or wrong. And what you have to do with your marketing is just recognize that those two different people exist, so that you're not trying to convince someone who is just never going to want to pay $66,000 for tuition. Never going to happen. They are never going to want to do that. You're not going to waste your time trying to convince them. But someone who would potentially pay that much, but they're looking at all of these other places where the tuition is cheap, they just don't know why your tuition is so much more expensive and what you're offering that is of more value. So have the conversations with the people who would never pay that much, not because you're going to convince them to pay that much, but because they're going to give you all this information that's going to make it easier for someone who would pay that much to know that they're making the right choice. Okay? This is the key factor here in overcoming objection. If you're reframing the concept of overcoming the objection in order to learn instead of reframing it, or instead of just framing it as overcoming the objection in the moment in order to convince that one specific person that you are going to that they should buy from you. If you are taking that approach, then this whole process gets real stressful real fast, because then you have to be thinking on your feet, or you have to have a whole lot of previously rehearsed answers in order to be like, oh, well, they didn't give me the budget question. And now I'm going to have to, okay, they gave me the lack of experience one. What do I say to that one? Like, I don't want you out here trying to memorize an entire set of sentences to overcome objections. What I want you to do is learn how to have a conversation with someone about it, instead of just simply walking away and being like, oh, okay, thank you, and not learning anything from that interaction. Especially because a lot of people will have an objection that a conversation could overcome if you would be willing to have it. Now, again, not saying that's why you're having the conversation, just saying having a conversation is always more useful than not. But this is not to say you're having a sales pitch. You're having a conversation. As soon as someone says it, you're like, oh, okay. Okay, so I want to move on. I did a whole article about the lack of urgency. It is one of my favorite ones. I honestly think it's great because there's a list. There's just question after question after question you could ask when someone does not have urgency, or like that not it's not a priority right now thing. A lot of that is a function of how someone is running their business or how they're running their department. And you can then ask questions about that, so that improve your marketing. So improve your marketing by saying, okay, if I'm running into people who this thing that I do never seems urgent to them, then I need to find out what is more urgent, like what is always more important than what I do. What gets priority, like what are the maybe 2 or 3 or 4 things that get priority over me and over what I offer, so that I can figure out how to reframe what I offer so that it can be number one or even number two, so that at the very least they're not pushing it until it becomes urgent. So that whole reframing process around urgency, you're kind of used to, because you can't change someone's mind again about the urgency of something in the moment. I know that we all, I feel like COVID maybe has made us all more acutely aware of our time, which is why the like days and the years and everything is just like blending together. We're just kind of in a big time soup. And as a function of that, everything that everyone is doing seems super urgent. Okay, well, I can't stop and do that because this thing is that I'm working on is so urgent. And so if you are a B2B person who has maybe a longer sales cycle, or if you're selling a product that has a higher price point, which usually indicates that you're going to need to have multiple touch points with people before they're going to make a purchase, then you may want to really hit on that lack of urgency objection, to start focusing on it, to start focusing on why whatever you're offering is deprioritized, so that you can market around how to shift people's mindsets about what you're doing, so that your thing becomes higher in their priority list, instead of them having to wait until whatever the thing is in their life is on fire, and then they're trying to put that fire out, and then they'll do whatever they can to do that. A lot of us, especially in me as a service-based business, I don't like working with people who are on fire, because it is too stressful. If someone has like a massively urgent marketing need, I would prefer they just go to someone else. Like, and I understand, oh my goodness, that's like a money pot, right? You're just going to be able to take as much as you want. And I'm like, yeah, it's not worth my sanity. I personally just really like peace. So I am not interested in like the frenetic pace of like, oh my God, everything has to happen yesterday. I would much rather be working with people who are, going into their biggest season, and we're going to be leisurely about the progression of our programming, so that we can actually see results and not have to have everything happen yesterday. That's my own preference. But that doesn't mean that, again, lack of urgency still is something that I really enjoy noodling on and thinking about as an objection, because it really does give you a lot of great marketing materials. As I go on and on about lack of objections, you can see how much I really like that topic. So the one that I want to talk about, though, that's not lack of objections, is something that I have had a lot of experience with. And I love talking about it because I am such a
Mhm.
massively overeducated human person, who is kind of autodidactic. So whenever people say it to me, I always am like laughing on the inside because I know that the real truth isn't this. It's not that, it's something else, right? So when someone says you have a lack of experience, this one is huge, right? Like a lack of experience or a lack of trust are two issues that come up a lot when it comes to both service based businesses and product based businesses, where maybe your business has not been providing this product for long enough for people to really feel like you can actually do the thing that you're saying you can do. If you are a brand new like wedding cake creator, you're a brand new wedding baker, you're making wedding cakes for the first time ever, and this is like your new gig and you're excited, you may run into people who are like, so wait, how many weddings have you done? Right? So lack of experience, they're the first thing they're saying is, wait, how many wedding cakes have you made? And not that they're looking for a discount, but they're concerned that you may or may not be able to do the thing that they're asking you for because of your lack of experience. And so this is, again, it is something that I know you're probably shocked that anyone would say to Lindsay, oh my goodness, why would you possibly be able to do this thing they're talking about? Like, you're just like a nobody person from Cleveland. And I've had someone say that to me. Hey, I'm not from Cleveland. I just live here. I mean, I've lived here for a long time and I was born here. But yes, I'm like, I got other issues with that one. Plus Cleveland's awesome. So don't do that. But I'm like, whenever someone says something along those lines, what I always hear, and I want you to hear as well, is an insecurity on their part, right? So the questions that you're asking from there are not really about you, they're about that person, right? So if someone says, well, I'm not sure if you can make that wedding cake, I like love everything you said here, but you've never made another, like you've never made a wedding cake for anybody's wedding before, or especially if you're brand new, then you want to, instead of like defending yourself, which is the first thing that you want to do, is you don't want to go into making a list of what your actual like qualifications are, mostly because that is not necessarily going to help. At the point that someone says you're inexperienced or they feel like they've determined that you have a lack of experience, the likelihood of turning that ship around is really low. And I know that from experience, no matter how much experience I have or haven't had, when someone has come at me with that you don't have enough experience thing, whenever that happens, again, it doesn't matter what I give them as evidence on the other side of it, it doesn't ever help. So this is another, again, really good marketing opportunity. What you really want to do at that point is ask questions. What experience, what type of experience would make you feel comfortable? Like, how many weddings would be enough? If I said I had done 12 weddings, would that be enough? Now, they're going to push back. They're going to immediately be like, "Oh, well, I didn't mean that." And you're like, "No, no, no, no. I'm asking a legitimate question. And I'm not asking the question because I'm trying to be funny or I'm trying to be facetious. I'm asking the question because I recognize that if you feel like I have a lack of experience, the only way that I'm going to be able to sell anyone else in the future who thinks that is by knowing what that means, right? What does a lack of experience mean to you, so that I can know going forward what a lack of experience might mean to someone else? Right? So you're going to frame that question that way, and you're going to ask all of the questions. How many years? How much money? How much time? How many credentials? What do you actually think someone needs to have in order for you to feel comfortable giving them their money, or giving them your money? There we go. Giving them your money in order to provide that product or service. How many units sold? How many hamburgers made? What does that look like to you? Now, this is useful because it is going to get them to think, even if you never, again, don't count on this to try to sell them anything, because that's not the point. The point of it is to get a real answer. Like, to get someone to say, okay, well, I do need this thing that I am talking to you about, but I've seen other people who have this kind of experience or that kind of experience. And you can even ask outright, who are you comparing me to in your mind? Like, what other business comes up in your mind when you think about my product or my service that I'm offering, and how does my experience compare to theirs? And so you're not, again, not doing that in order to try to sell them. You're doing that in order to try to discover how far away from the quote unquote ideal you are, so that you can cover your bases in your marketing with those answers. So if someone is going to say, oh, wow, you need 12 weddings in order to be like legit, now, you might use this entire conversation to build a frequently asked questions section on your website, where you actually address the questions that people ask about your experience and you put discrete answers. So you say, how do I know that do you have years of experience doing this? How many weddings have you done? Like, if you can basically, all of those little things that people have asked you get to be an individual question that you then answer based on the conversations that you've had when someone did ask you those questions. It's very important to get those questions answered, to get those questions out there so that you can get answers from people that are going to be reasonable for you to use elsewhere. Again, not because you're trying to sell that person in the moment. That is never the goal. The goal is not to make money that second. The goal is to take that information and to become a better marketer and to become a better business owner based on it. So I want you all to think critically about this. I know that is a really challenging topic, is to think about overcoming objections in a really reasonable and concrete fashion. But if you are interested in, right now joining me to work this out, get support, negotiation skills, we're going to be talking about all of these things in a workshop that's starting in 4 minutes. So I am going to copy and paste into the chat right now a link for you to join us. I would love to see you there. What's lovely about this is that we will actually be walking through all of these objections and talking about how to overcome them. And we will also be talking about some really awesome negotiation fundamentals to help you think in advance about some answers to these questions, so that when you are out there trying to sell things, instead of you doing that, on the defensive, meaning you're just trying to defend myself against all these things that people are going to say, instead that you go out there kind of prepared, that you prepare yourself in advance, know what people are potentially going to say, and then have responses, not that you're like practicing cookie cutter responses, but that you've thought about it and that you have some idea of what the answer should be. We're going to be working through those in just a few minutes. So hopefully you will join me. Thank you again for coming to another Take Charge Tuesday. I'm really excited about these sessions. I think that they're fantastic. I love the participation that you guys are having with me. And I will see you all in hopefully 2 minutes over in the session where we get to hang out and chat. With that,